Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is, you wouldn't survive a day as King Baldwin IV. You get comfortable, take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wouldn't survive a day as King Baldwin IV. Imagine that the first sound you hear is not an alarm, but the slow ringing of church bells carried across the hills of Jerusalem. The sky is still painted in gentle shades of blue and silver, and the cool air of early morning drifts through the narrow stone windows of a royal chamber. A small flame flickers quietly beside your bed, filling the room with the faint scent of warm beeswax. You open your eyes. For a brief moment, everything feels peaceful. The city is not yet fully awakened. Merchants are only beginning to arrange their goods beneath woven cloth awnings. Pilgrims quietly make their way toward the sacred places that have drawn travelers from distant lands for centuries. Somewhere below, a stable boy brushes a horse, while another servant carries fresh water from a nearby cistern. Doves flutter from rooftop to rooftop, and the first sunlight slowly begins to touch the pale limestone walls that make Jerusalem seem to glow each morning. It would almost be easy to believe that this is simply another ordinary day. But it is not. You are King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. You are only a teenager, yet an entire kingdom depends upon your decisions. Noble families study every word you speak. Soldiers wait for your commands. Priests pray for your health. Messengers arrive each day carrying news from distant castles, border fortresses, and neighboring kingdoms. Most people remember Baldwin IV by another name, the Leper King. It is a title that sounds heavy even centuries later. Yet if you had stood beside him during one quiet morning inside the royal palace, you might have noticed something different before you noticed the illness itself. You would have seen a young ruler trying to begin another day. History often remembers kings through great victories or famous defeats. It tells us about battles, treaties, and crowns. But before any of those events could happen, a king still had to wake up, wash his face, meet his advisors, listen to endless reports, and somehow carry responsibilities that never seemed to grow lighter. For Baldwin, even these simple moments required determination. Picture yourself sitting up slowly as servants quietly prepare the room. Heavy curtains are pulled back just enough to welcome the soft morning light. Fine wool blankets are folded with practiced care. A silver basin filled with cool water rests upon a carved wooden table. Nearby, a simple wooden cross reminds everyone in the room that faith is woven deeply into the rhythm of life here. Outside these walls lies one of the most complicated kingdoms in the medieval world. The Kingdom of Jerusalem is not a peaceful island surrounded by friendly neighbors. It stands at the meeting point of continents, cultures, languages, and religions. Latin Christians rule the kingdom, but many of its people speak Arabic, others speak Greek, Armenian, Syriac, or Hebrew. Merchants arrive from Italy, France, Egypt, Byzantium, and beyond. Every marketplace carries the sound of many voices speaking different languages at once. The kingdom itself was established after the First Crusade at the end of the 11th century. European knights captured Jerusalem in 1099, creating a Christian kingdom in lands that had long been home to Muslims, Jews, and Eastern Christians alike. By Baldwin's lifetime, almost 80 years have passed since that dramatic conquest. Children have been born who have never known another ruler. Vineyards have grown, churches have been repaired, castles have risen from rocky hillsides, and trade has connected distant ports across the Mediterranean Sea. Yet peace remains fragile. Every road leading into the kingdom carries uncertainty. To the north, rival powers watch carefully. To the south, Egypt remains influential. Across Syria, ambitious leaders seek opportunities. And among them is one remarkable man whose name will echo through history beside Baldwin's own: Saladin. But this morning, Saladin is still far away. For now, your attention rests on something much closer: your own hands. Imagine lifting one hand towards the morning light. Years earlier, your tutor noticed something unusual. According to the chronicler William of Tyre, Baldwin did not react normally when his companions pinched or scratched his arm during childhood games. Pain that should have been obvious simply was not there. At first, no one understood why. Children often bruise themselves while playing. A forgotten scrape rarely seems important. Yet over time, the strange numbness became impossible to ignore. Medieval physicians observed carefully, using the medical knowledge available to them. They could not understand bacteria or the immune system. They knew nothing of modern neurology. Instead, they relied upon observation, inherited learning from Greek and Arabic scholars, experience, and prayer. Eventually, they reached the conclusion that would change Baldwin's entire life: leprosy. Today, historians usually refer to the illness as Hansen's disease, named centuries later after the physician who identified the bacterium responsible for it. Modern medicine understands that the disease spreads only with prolonged close contact and is much less contagious than medieval people feared. It is now treatable with antibiotics. But none of that knowledge existed during Baldwin's lifetime. To those around him, leprosy inspired deep uncertainty. Some viewed it as a medical condition. Others believed it carried spiritual meaning. Many simply feared what they did not understand. Yet Baldwin remained heir to the throne. There was no simple path around that reality. His father, King Amalric, needed a successor. The kingdom needed stability. And so the young prince continued learning everything expected of a future ruler. Imagine following him through the palace corridors. The floors beneath your feet are smooth limestone worn gently by generations of footsteps. Narrow windows allow thin beams of sunlight to stretch across the walls. Servants bow respectfully as the king passes. Some have known Baldwin since childhood. Others still struggle to hide their concern whenever they notice another subtle sign of illness. The palace itself is not merely a home, it is an office, a court, a fortress, a symbol. Every visitor watches everything. How quickly the king walks, how firmly he speaks, whether he appears tired, whether he smiles, whether he coughs, whether he grips a chair for balance. Every small movement becomes information. In medieval politics, appearances matter almost as much as armies. A confident king encourages loyal followers. A weak-looking king invites dangerous ambitions. And Baldwin understands this better than almost anyone. He cannot afford many careless moments. As the morning slowly arrives, advisors begin gathering inside a council chamber. Maps lie spread across heavy wooden tables. Wax seals remain attached to unopened letters delivered during the night. Candles still burn softly, although daylight grows stronger with each passing minute. One messenger has traveled for several days from a frontier castle. Dust still clings to his boots. Another arrives from Acre carrying reports about ships entering the harbor. A third brings news from noble families discussing marriages, inheritances, and alliances. Running a medieval kingdom rarely means constant warfare. More often it means endless conversations. Taxes, harvests, road repairs, castle supplies, trade agreements, religious disputes, appointments, legal judgments. Every decision influences thousands of lives. Imagine sitting quietly while each report is read aloud. Outside, birds continue singing. Inside, every sentence carries weight. Someone reports that grain prices have shifted after an unusually dry season. Another explains that repairs are needed along sections of a defensive wall. A bishop requests royal approval for church matters. Merchants ask for protection along caravan routes. A noble complains about another noble. Another noble complains about the first noble. Some things, it seems, never change across the centuries. Baldwin listens patiently. William of Tyre praised the young king for possessing remarkable intelligence, despite his illness. Those who knew him often described him as thoughtful and capable, qualities that became increasingly important as his physical strength slowly declined. Leadership, after all, begins with listening. The kingdom needs a mind that remains steady even when the body becomes unreliable. You find yourself noticing the quiet discipline surrounding every royal meeting. No one interrupts casually. Scribes dip feather quills into dark ink. Each important decision is carefully recorded. Wax tablets lie beside parchment documents. Outside the chamber, armed guards remain still beneath polished helmets that catch the growing sunlight. The smell of fresh bread drifts faintly from palace kitchens. Somewhere nearby, cooks prepare the day's first meal. Life continues even while history quietly unfolds behind closed doors. That is one of the gentle truths about the past. Great events often happen while ordinary life carries on around them. A baker still kneads dough. A child still laughs in a nearby street. A donkey still pulls a cart through the marketplace. Meanwhile, inside a palace, decisions are made that future generations will study for centuries. And this is only the beginning of another day. The morning meeting gradually comes to an end, though no one in the chamber truly feels that the work is finished. In a medieval kingdom, there is rarely such a thing as completing every task. One concern simply gives way to another, like gentle waves reaching the shore one after the next. Imagine rising from the carved wooden chair where the council has gathered. The movement is careful rather than hurried. Servants quietly step forward, not because ceremony demands it, but because they have learned to notice the smallest signs of discomfort. Baldwin accepts their assistance only when necessary. Even as a young king, he understands that every gesture is observed. The nobles around him exchange respectful bows before leaving the chamber. Their polished belts carry finely crafted daggers, though peace within the palace depends far more upon diplomacy than steel. As the heavy wooden doors close behind them, the quiet returns. For a few precious moments, the palace feels almost still. Picture yourself walking through one of Jerusalem's long stone corridors. Sunlight now pours through narrow windows, warming patches of the cool limestone floor. The walls carry faded banners bearing the cross of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Their colors have softened after years beneath desert sunlight, yet they continue to remind every visitor of the kingdom's purpose and identity. Outside, the city is fully awakened. The streets are alive with the ordinary rhythm of daily life. Traders unfold bolts of cloth dyed deep crimson, blue, and green. Potters arrange rows of freshly fired bowls beside their workshops. Bakers remove warm loaves from stone ovens, and the comforting scent of bread drifts into the narrow lanes. Jerusalem is unlike almost any other city in the medieval world. People have traveled here for generations, each carrying different languages, customs, and beliefs. Christian pilgrims arrive after months of exhausting travel across Europe. Muslim merchants negotiate prices with remarkable patience. Jewish scholars continue traditions that stretch back many centuries. Armenian craftsmen shape delicate carvings. Greek monks quietly pass through shaded courtyards. The city is not silent, yet it is rarely chaotic. Instead, countless small sounds weave together into a gentle rhythm. Footsteps upon worn stones, the distant call of merchants greeting familiar customers, the creaking wheels of wooden carts, the fluttering wings of pigeons lifting from rooftops, the soft ringing of church bells carried by the morning breeze. If you closed your eyes, you might recognize that cities have always sounded remarkably alive. Inside the royal palace, however, another lesson awaits the young king. Education does not end with a crown. Baldwin continues meeting scholars, clerics, military commanders, and legal advisors because ruling requires constant learning. Among the most influential figures in his early life is William of Tyre. William is far more than a churchman. He is one of the kingdom's greatest scholars, educated in Europe before returning to Jerusalem. He studies history, law, theology, and classical learning with unusual dedication. More importantly for us today, he carefully records many events of Baldwin's life, leaving historians one of the most valuable contemporary accounts of the kingdom. Imagine entering a quiet library where William waits. The room smells faintly of parchment, leather bindings, and beeswax candles. Shelves hold handwritten manuscripts copied patiently by skilled scribes. Every page represents weeks or even months of careful labor. Books are treasures. Few people own them. Many cannot read at all. Knowledge moves slowly through the medieval world, carried by memory, conversation, and handwritten texts. William greets the young king warmly. Their conversations are thoughtful rather than hurried. Together they discuss scripture, history, politics, and the responsibilities of leadership. William never pretends that Baldwin's illness does not exist, but neither does he allow it to define every discussion. Instead, he prepares the king to think, to judge fairly, to recognize both wisdom and ambition in those around him. These lessons will prove invaluable, for while Baldwin's body weakens over the years, his judgment often earns the respect of those who serve beside him. You find yourself lingering in the library for a little while longer. A scribe sits quietly near an open window. Goose feathers are carefully trimmed into quills before being dipped into dark ink. Each stroke across the parchment is deliberate. Mistakes cannot simply be erased. If an error appears, the scribe must patiently scrape away the ink with a small knife before writing again. The work requires extraordinary patience. Outside, sunlight grows brighter. The air becomes warmer as the day progresses. Servants begin opening additional shutters to allow gentle breezes into the palace. Jerusalem's climate often brings hot afternoons, particularly during the long summer months. Thick stone walls help keep interiors pleasantly cool, while shaded courtyards offer welcome relief from the midday sun. Imagine stepping into one of those courtyards. A simple fountain murmurs softly in the center. Water is precious here, carefully collected and managed through cisterns that have served the city for generations. Small birds gather along the fountain's edge before darting away again. Olive trees provide scattered patches of shade. Their twisted trunks speak quietly of age. Perhaps some have already stood here before Baldwin was born. Perhaps they will continue standing long after everyone gathered in this palace has become part of history. The young king pauses for a moment. Not every pause is caused by illness. Sometimes even rulers simply need a quiet breath. Life inside the palace rarely allows complete privacy, yet these peaceful corners offer brief moments away from formal audiences and endless discussions. Imagine listening only to the sound of flowing water. For a few heartbeats, the burdens of kingship seem distant, yet they never disappear entirely. Soon another messenger approaches. His journey has been long. Dust covers the hem of his cloak. His horse, still breathing heavily in the stable below, has carried him across rough roads from one of the kingdom's northern fortresses. The message concerns border patrols. Nothing alarming, nothing urgent. Simply another reminder that watchfulness never ends. The kingdom of Jerusalem depends heavily upon its network of castles. These fortifications are far more than military strongholds. They store food, protect travelers, collect taxes, provide shelter during uncertain times, signal danger across long distances. Many stand upon rocky hills, where wide views stretch across valleys and trade routes. From their towers, guards watch patiently for approaching caravans, pilgrims, or armies. Imagine standing atop one of those walls. The wind carries the scent of dry grass and distant cedar. Below, narrow roads wind through the landscape like pale ribbons. Tiny groups of travelers move steadily beneath the bright sky. Most days pass peacefully. History often remembers battles, but people living through the Middle Ages experienced many ordinary days between them. Farmers tended vineyards. Shepherds watched their flocks. Children played beside village wells. Monks copied manuscripts. Merchants argued over prices. Life continued because it had to. Back inside Jerusalem, Baldwin reads the report with careful attention before quietly discussing it with his commanders. He asks thoughtful questions. How many supplies remain? Have local villages reported unusual activity? Are the roads safe for pilgrims? Should additional horses be sent? His decisions are measured. There is little room for carelessness. Every order affects real people living along distant frontiers. As the morning slowly gives way to noon, palace kitchens become busier. The comforting aroma of roasted lamb, herbs, onions, and fresh bread drifts through nearby halls. Large clay ovens radiate gentle warmth. Copper pots simmer quietly over steady fires. Servants carry baskets of figs, dates, olives, almonds, and soft white cheese prepared from sheep's or goat's milk. Simple meals often sustain busy days. Although royal tables can display impressive abundance during important ceremonies, everyday dining is usually more practical than many modern stories imagine. Fresh fruit, bread, olive oil, fish when available, seasonal vegetables, wine diluted with water. These familiar foods appear again and again across the Eastern Mediterranean. Imagine sitting quietly at the king's table. Conversation remains respectful. There is laughter from time to time, though never for long. The responsibilities waiting beyond the meal are never forgotten. Baldwin eats carefully. His illness has already begun shaping daily routines in ways others may barely notice. Some movements take slightly longer. Some expressions reveal hidden fatigue. Yet determination remains stronger than discomfort. Those around him recognize both qualities. They see a young king whose body presents increasing challenges, but whose mind continues searching patiently for the wisest course. It is an unusual combination. Perhaps that is one reason Baldwin continues to fascinate historians centuries later. Not because he was untouched by suffering, but because he carried responsibility alongside it. The afternoon still lies ahead. More visitors are already waiting beyond the palace doors. More decisions will soon arrive. And somewhere beyond the hills, events are quietly unfolding that will one day bring Baldwin and Saladin onto the same stage of history. For now, however, the city continues breathing beneath the warm Jerusalem sun, unaware of how closely its future is already taking shape. The afternoon settles gently over Jerusalem, and the bright light of midday begins to soften against the pale stone walls of the city. Heat lingers above the streets, while narrow alleyways offer cool ribbons of shade where people pause to rest. The pace of life changes almost without anyone noticing.
Merchants continue their work, but conversations become quieter, and even the horses seem content to stand beneath awnings, flicking their tails at persistent flies. Inside the royal palace, another part of the king's day quietly begins. Imagine standing beside an open window that overlooks the city. A warm breeze carries the distant scent of olive wood smoke, freshly baked bread, and dry earth warmed by the sun. Somewhere below, children laugh as they chase one another across a courtyard. A flock of pigeons circles above the rooftops before settling near one of Jerusalem's ancient towers. From this height, the city appears peaceful. Yet Baldwin knows that appearances rarely tell the whole story. Every kingdom contains countless small concerns that never reach the pages of history. Farmers worry about rain. Traders wonder whether ships will arrive safely. Families arrange marriages. Craftsmen hope for enough customers to support another season of work. A king must somehow think about all of these things at once. The afternoon audience begins. One by one, visitors are welcomed into the great hall. Some are noblemen seeking permission to settle disagreements over land. Others represent monasteries, requesting assistance with repairs or supplies. A merchant from the coast asks for greater protection along a caravan route that has recently become less secure. Every request may seem ordinary by itself, but together they form the quiet fabric of governing a medieval kingdom. Picture yourself seated upon the royal chair. It is impressive without being extravagant. Carved wood supports embroidered cushions, and sunlight catches the polished grain. Behind you hangs the banner of Jerusalem, reminding everyone present that they stand before the kingdom itself, not merely before one young man. Baldwin listens far more than he speaks. This habit surprises some visitors. Many imagine that a king should issue commands immediately, but thoughtful rulers often ask questions before making decisions. Baldwin has learned that the first story he hears is rarely the complete one. Two neighboring lords disagree about the ownership of a vineyard. Each believes old boundaries favor his family. Witnesses are called. Old documents are examined. Memories are compared. The discussion lasts much longer than either man expected. Eventually, Baldwin delays his judgment until additional evidence can be gathered. Some leave disappointed. Others leave relieved. Justice, he understands, sometimes requires patience rather than speed. As the afternoon slowly unfolds, another familiar face enters the hall. It is one of the kingdom's experienced military commanders. Maps are carried beneath his arm. They are carefully unrolled across a broad oak table. Imagine leaning closer. The maps are beautifully hand-drawn, though they lack the perfect accuracy of modern cartography. Hills, rivers, castles, and roads appear in careful ink, shaped by observation rather than satellites. Tiny crosses mark churches. Small towers represent fortifications guarding the kingdom's borders. The commander quietly explains recent patrols. Nothing suggests immediate danger. Yet there is movement beyond the frontiers. Caravans report growing cooperation between Muslim territories under the leadership of a remarkable commander named Saladin Yusuf ibn Ayyub.
In Europe, history usually remembers him simply as Saladin. At this moment, however, Saladin is still strengthening his position. He has not yet become the legendary figure remembered by later generations. He serves patiently, building alliances, earning loyalty, and gradually extending his influence across Egypt and Syria. Baldwin studies these reports carefully. He understands something that many rulers forget. Great changes often happen slowly before they happen suddenly. No army appears without preparation. No powerful kingdom emerges overnight. Wise leaders pay attention long before danger reaches their gates. You find yourself noticing how calm the discussion remains. No one speaks with panic. No one raises their voice. Military planning is careful work. Supplies matter as much as courage. Water sources matter as much as swords. Healthy horses may determine success more than shining armor. The commanders discuss grain storage, road conditions, messenger routes, castle repairs. Everything that allows an army to function long before a battle ever begins. Outside, the afternoon breeze stirs the branches of olive trees growing inside the palace gardens. A gardener quietly trims herbs planted beside narrow stone paths, mint, rosemary, sage. Their gentle fragrance mingles with the scent of warm earth. Even kings appreciate peaceful gardens. Throughout history, rulers often sought places where they could think away from crowded halls and endless conversations. Perhaps Baldwin walks here for a short while after the meeting ends. Imagine following at a respectful distance. His steps remain steady, though not effortless. The effects of Hansen's disease continue to progress. Modern medicine tells us that untreated Hansen's disease can gradually damage nerves, reducing sensation in the hands, feet, and face. Injuries that healthy people immediately notice may go unnoticed, leading to further complications over time. Baldwin knows none of these scientific explanations. He only experiences the reality itself. Some mornings are easier, others are more difficult. Yet the kingdom cannot pause simply because its king feels tired. The responsibilities continue waiting. As the afternoon slowly begins to cool, several young pages practice their lessons in a nearby courtyard. Wooden practice swords knock gently against one another while an older knight offers patient instruction. Not every lesson concerns fighting. They are also taught courtesy, discipline, reading, religious instruction, the customs expected of noble households. Baldwin watches them for a moment. Perhaps they remind him of his own childhood. There was a time when he, too, trained without imagining how quickly responsibility would arrive. A quiet sadness may briefly cross his thoughts. Not because he fears hard work, but because illness has already taken away certain possibilities. Like many medieval kings, Baldwin is expected to lead armies personally. His determination remains strong. His body, however, grows less reliable with each passing year. Still, he refuses to surrender his responsibilities. That quiet resilience becomes one of the defining qualities remembered by those who knew him. The palace chapel soon calls worshippers together for afternoon prayers.
Imagine entering the cool stone building. The air feels noticeably different here. Candles burn before painted icons. Soft voices echo beneath the vaulted ceiling. The fragrance of incense rises gently through shafts of golden sunlight, streaming from narrow windows. People kneel quietly. Some pray for peace, others pray for health. Some simply sit in silence. Faith shapes nearly every aspect of life in 12th century Jerusalem. Whether rich or poor, knight or merchant, monk or servant, most people understand their daily lives through a deeply religious view of the world. For Baldwin, prayer offers something beyond ceremony. It provides stillness. No advisors interrupt, no disputes require judgment, no reports await his signature. Only silence, only reflection, only the quiet hope that tomorrow will bring enough strength for another day's work. Outside, shadows begin stretching across the streets. The fierce brightness of afternoon slowly gives way to the softer light of early evening. Market stalls begin closing one by one. The last customers bargain over baskets of figs and jars of olive oil. Camels returning from distant roads enter the city gates at an unhurried pace. Their drivers exchange greetings with familiar guards who have watched countless caravans arrive over the years. Jerusalem settles gently toward evening. The day has been peaceful, yet beyond the horizon, history continues moving. Far away, alliances strengthen, castles prepare, messengers ride, leaders make plans. The paths of Baldwin and Saladin are drawing closer, though neither man can yet see exactly where those paths will meet. For now, the young king returns to the palace as the evening air becomes pleasantly cool, carrying with it the quiet promise of another chapter still waiting to unfold. Evening arrives slowly over Jerusalem, and the city begins to glow beneath the warm colors of the setting sun. Golden light settles across rooftops, church towers, and ancient stone walls that have witnessed countless generations. The air grows cooler with each passing moment, bringing welcome relief after the warmth of the afternoon. Imagine standing upon one of the palace terraces. From here, much of the holy city stretches before you. Thin columns of smoke rise from household kitchens where families prepare the evening meal. Bells ring softly from distant churches, while the quiet murmur of conversation drifts upward from the streets below. Merchants carefully fold their awnings. Donkeys return home carrying empty baskets. Pilgrims who spent the day visiting sacred places slowly make their way toward inns and monasteries where they will rest for the night. For a little while, Jerusalem seems wrapped in calm. It is easy to forget that this city stands at the heart of one of the most contested regions in the medieval world. You find yourself leaning gently against the cool stone of the terrace wall. Below, soldiers change shifts at the palace gates. Their movements are unhurried but disciplined. Armor catches the last rays of sunlight, reflecting small flashes of gold before fading into the deepening blue of evening. Guard duty is rarely exciting. Most nights pass quietly. A watchman spends long hours listening to the wind, watching distant roads, and waiting for something that may never happen. Yet those peaceful nights are exactly what every kingdom hopes to preserve. Inside the palace, servants begin lighting oil lamps, one by one. Their soft flames push back the growing darkness. Unlike modern homes filled with electric light, the medieval world gradually surrendered each evening to the night. Shadows became longer, colors softened, daily life naturally slowed. Picture yourself walking through the palace corridors once more. The sounds have changed since morning. Instead of busy meetings and hurried footsteps, there is now the quiet scrape of chairs being moved, the gentle crackle of burning lamps, and distant voices speaking in lower tones. The day's formal business has mostly ended, but a king's work never truly finishes. A trusted advisor approaches Baldwin with several sealed letters that have arrived late in the day. One comes from the great coastal city of Acre. Another has traveled from a fortress overlooking the Jordan Valley. A third bears the seal of a noble family requesting another audience. Each letter represents another decision waiting to be made tomorrow. Baldwin reads them patiently. Imagine the careful way he breaks each wax seal with a small knife. Parchment gently unfolds. The handwriting differs from one letter to another. Some scribes write with elegant precision. Others leave hurried lines that reveal the speed with which the message was prepared. Every letter carries news from people who expect their king to understand their concerns. Some requests are practical. Others are deeply personal. A widow asks for confirmation of inherited property after her husband's death. A monastery requests assistance repairing part of its roof before winter rains arrive. A castle commander reports that several horses have grown lame and should be replaced before the next military patrol. None of these matters will become famous. No chronicler will devote entire chapters to them. Yet together they form the ordinary responsibilities of ruling. History often remembers crowns. Kings remember paperwork. As the evening continues, Baldwin withdraws to a quieter chamber where only a handful of trusted companions remain. Among them are physicians who continue observing the slow progress of his illness. Imagine the room. Simple shelves hold ceramic jars filled with herbs, oils, dried flowers, and carefully prepared medicines. A mortar and pestle rest upon a wooden table where ingredients are mixed according to medieval medical understanding. The physicians examine the king with gentle respect. They know they cannot cure him. The knowledge of their age simply does not allow it. Instead, they try to ease discomfort, protect wounds from becoming worse, and preserve his strength for as long as possible. Some remedies are based upon practical observation. Others reflect the medical theories inherited from ancient Greek and Arabic scholars who believed health depended upon balancing the body's humors. Modern medicine has replaced many of those ideas, yet medieval physicians were often sincere observers, doing the best they could with the knowledge available to them. Baldwin thanks them quietly. There is dignity in the exchange. No false promises are made. No miracle is expected. Only careful attention and compassion. Perhaps this is one of the quiet lessons history leaves behind. people in every century have cared for one another with whatever knowledge they possessed. Outside, darkness settles across Jerusalem. The stars begin appearing one after another above the clear eastern sky. Without electric lights, the heavens seem wonderfully bright. Imagine stepping into the palace garden once more. The evening breeze carries the delicate fragrance of jasmine growing near the walls. Crickets begin their steady chorus beneath low shrubs. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd guides his flock toward shelter before the night grows cooler. Baldwin pauses beneath an old olive tree. Its branches twist gently overhead, their silver-green leaves whispering whenever the wind passes through them. Perhaps this is one of the few places where he can simply be a young man rather than a king. He is still only in his teens, yet every day demands decisions that would challenge rulers twice his age. Few people around him completely understand what it feels like to carry both a kingdom and an incurable illness at the same time. Even fewer can imagine the loneliness that sometimes accompanies such responsibility. Still, Baldwin is not alone. His sisters remain important members of the royal family. Among them is Princess Sibylla, whose future marriage will eventually become one of the kingdom's most significant political questions. In medieval Europe and the Crusader states, royal marriages were rarely private matters. They shaped alliances, determined succession, influenced diplomacy. Sometimes they strengthened kingdoms. Sometimes they divided them. Although Baldwin cannot yet know exactly how these events will unfold, he already understands that every family decision may carry political consequences. The royal household itself is a place of constant movement. Servants prepare chambers for the night. Stable hands brush weary horses after a long day's work. Kitchen workers clean heavy cooking pots while sharing quiet conversations about ordinary life. One speaks of his children. Another wonders whether rain will come early this year. Even inside a palace, most people think less about politics than about tomorrow's simple tasks. As the night deepens, Baldwin finally retires to his private chamber. The room is peaceful. A single oil lamp burns beside the bed. Its gentle flame dances whenever the evening breeze slips through the narrow window. Imagine sitting quietly for a moment before sleep. The kingdom is safe tonight. No alarms echo through the streets. No enemy banners appear beyond the walls. Yet somewhere beyond Jerusalem, another leader also prepares for tomorrow. Saladin continues building his influence with patience and remarkable skill. He studies politics as carefully as warfare. He earns loyalty not only through victories, but through steady leadership. Neither Baldwin nor Saladin fully realizes how closely their futures are becoming intertwined. The years ahead will test both men in ways neither can yet foresee. For now, however, the palace grows silent. The lamps burn lower. The footsteps in the corridors gradually disappear. The stars continue their quiet journey across the sky above Jerusalem, watching over a young king whose greatest battles are only beginning. And as sleep slowly comes to the palace, another morning waits just beyond the horizon. Long before the first hint of dawn appears above the hills surrounding Jerusalem, the palace remains wrapped in quiet darkness. Most of the city still sleeps beneath a sky scattered with countless stars.
Only a few lamps burn steadily along the walls, where watchmen continue their patient duty through the final hours of the night. Imagine opening your eyes before sunrise. The room is cool, and the silence feels almost complete. A faint breeze enters through the narrow stone window, carrying the distant scent of dry earth and olive trees. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, a rooster announces the coming morning a little earlier than necessary, its call echoing softly across the sleeping city. For many people, another hour of rest would follow. For a king, the day often begins before the sun. Baldwin sits quietly for a moment before rising. The palace servants know his routine well. They move gently through the chamber, careful not to disturb the calm that still fills the building. One places fresh water in a polished basin. Another folds yesterday's garments before laying out clean linen and a finely woven tunic, suitable for the day's responsibilities. Simple tasks become part of a familiar rhythm. There is comfort in routine, especially when so much else remains uncertain. Imagine washing your face with cool water, drawn from one of Jerusalem's great cisterns. The water feels refreshing after the warmth of the previous day. Outside, the eastern horizon slowly begins to change, from deep blue to pale gray. As the morning slowly arrives, the city begins waking one household at a time. The baker kneads dough by the light of an oil lamp before placing fresh loaves into a stone oven. A widow sweeps the small courtyard outside her home. A monk quietly prepares for the first prayers of the day. A stable boy carries buckets of water to thirsty horses. None of them knows exactly what the king's schedule will bring today. Yet their lives depend, in ways both large and small, upon the stability of the kingdom he governs. This is one of history's quiet truths. Most people rarely meet their rulers. Even so, the decisions made inside a palace often shape ordinary lives beyond its walls. After a light morning meal of fresh bread, olives, goat's cheese, and watered wine, Baldwin prepares to leave the palace. Today he wishes to ride through parts of Jerusalem.
Not as a grand ceremony, not as a military parade, simply to see the city with his own eyes. Imagine stepping into the palace courtyard. Several horses wait patiently beneath the soft morning light. Their breath rises gently in the cool air. Grooms tighten saddles, while knights quietly exchange greetings with one another. For Baldwin, riding has become more difficult than it once was. His illness gradually weakens the nerves that help him control movement and feel pain. Modern historians believe that as the disease progressed, remaining on horseback demanded increasing effort. Yet he refuses to abandon the habit entirely. A king who never leaves his palace risks ruling only through reports written by others. Sometimes seeing a place matters more than reading about it. With a small escort accompanying him, Baldwin passes through the palace gate and enters the streets of Jerusalem. Picture yourself riding slowly beside him. The city is already becoming lively. Shopkeepers lift heavy wooden shutters. The smell of fresh bread drifts from nearby ovens. Donkeys patiently carry baskets filled with vegetables gathered before sunrise. Children run errands for their families, laughing as they weave between adults who have already begun another day's work. The streets are narrower than many modern visitors imagine. Stone buildings stand close together, creating welcome patches of shade as the sun climbs higher. People notice the king. Some bow respectfully. Others simply pause to watch. Many have seen Baldwin before. Some remember him as a healthy child. Others have quietly observed the gradual changes brought by illness, yet their expressions reveal more respect than pity. A ruler who continues serving despite obvious hardship often earns a different kind of loyalty. Imagine passing through one of Jerusalem's busy marketplaces. The sounds arrive gently from every direction. A merchant measures spices with careful precision. Another unfolds colorful fabrics brought by ship from distant ports. Copper bowls catch the sunlight, glowing warmly upon wooden stalls. The fragrance of cinnamon, pepper, frankincense,
and dried herbs mingles pleasantly with the aroma of warm bread and ripe figs. Trade has always been one of Jerusalem's lifelines. Although the city is famous for its religious importance, it also depends upon merchants who connect distant lands. Goods arrive from Egypt, from the Italian city-states, from Byzantium, from inland Syria, from villages scattered across the surrounding countryside. Every caravan strengthens the kingdom's economy. Every successful harvest fills another storehouse. Every peaceful trading season brings hope that life may continue without interruption. Baldwin watches carefully. He notices cracked paving stones that should eventually be repaired. He sees elderly pilgrims resting beneath shaded archways after long journeys. He observes soldiers greeting local merchants by name. Small details reveal the health of a kingdom. History sometimes gives the impression that kings thought only about war. The reality was far more practical. Roads, markets, water, harvests, justice. Without these, even the strongest army cannot protect a nation for long. The ride continues toward one of Jerusalem's hospitals. Imagine approaching the great buildings maintained by religious orders, devoted to caring for travelers and the sick. The Knights Hospitaller are already well known throughout the kingdom. Originally established to care for pilgrims, they have gradually become both caregivers and military defenders. Inside their hospital, people from many backgrounds receive treatment. Rich, poor, local residents, foreign visitors. The physicians work with the knowledge available in the 12th century, combining practical experience with ideas inherited from generations of medical scholarship. Baldwin's visit is quiet. He understands illness better than most rulers ever will. Perhaps that understanding gives him greater sympathy for those suffering within these walls. He does not arrive seeking praise. He comes because caring for the vulnerable remains one responsibility of Christian kingship as it was understood in his time. You find yourself walking through cool stone halls. The scent of herbs hangs gently in the air. Patients rest upon simple beds while attendants move quietly between them.
Soft conversations replace hurried voices. Even here, amid sickness and uncertainty, there is remarkable patience. One elderly pilgrim smiles faintly after recognizing the young king. Another whispers a blessing as Baldwin passes. No speeches are exchanged. No grand ceremony interrupts the peaceful atmosphere. Sometimes presence alone speaks clearly enough. As the visit ends, Baldwin steps back into the bright morning sunlight. The warmth feels stronger now. Jerusalem continues its ordinary rhythm around him. A mason chips carefully at fresh stone near a church entrance. Women carry clay jars balanced with practiced ease. Children gather around a storyteller, entertaining them with familiar tales passed down through generations. Life continues. It always does. The king turns his horse back toward the palace, unaware that far beyond these ancient walls, events are quietly unfolding that will soon demand every measure of wisdom, courage, and endurance he possesses. The peaceful morning cannot last forever. History is slowly approaching, and with it the first great test of Baldwin's reign. The sun continues its slow climb above the hills of Judea, and by late morning the warmth settles gently across the kingdom. From the palace windows, Jerusalem appears almost timeless. Its pale limestone buildings reflect the bright light, giving the city a quiet radiance the pilgrims have described for centuries. Imagine standing beside Baldwin once again as he returns from his ride through the city. Dust clings lightly to the boots of the escorting knights. Their horses are watered and led back toward the royal stables, where experienced grooms carefully inspect each animal before removing saddles and brushing away the morning's dust. Stable life follows its own dependable rhythm, largely unchanged whether the kingdom enjoys peace or prepares for war. The palace gates close behind the small procession. Inside, the atmosphere immediately shifts. The sounds of the marketplace fade. The responsibilities of government return. A servant quietly informs the king that several important visitors have arrived during his absence. Among them are representatives from two noble families whose disagreement has grown increasingly difficult to ignore. Such disputes are common throughout medieval Europe and the Crusader states. Land determines wealth. Castles protect land. Marriage determines inheritance. Inheritance shapes alliances. One disagreement can easily spread into many others if left unresolved. Imagine entering the audience chamber once more. The room feels cooler than the courtyard outside, its thick stone walls keeping out much of the day's growing heat. Narrow windows allow soft streams of sunlight to fall across polished wooden tables covered with documents, wax seals, and rolled maps. The two noblemen stand several paces apart. Neither appears eager to greet the other. Both bow respectfully before the king. Both insist that justice is on their side. Baldwin listens without interruption. His illness has taught him patience in many areas of life, and the patience now serves him well as a ruler. One man speaks, then the other. Witnesses are invited to explain what they have seen. Ancient charters are unfolded with great care.
Their ink has faded over the years, yet every line still carries legal importance. Imagine the silence that fills the chamber while Baldwin studies the documents. No one wishes to interrupt. Even those who disagree recognize that the king takes their concerns seriously. After a long discussion, Baldwin proposes a compromise that protects the rights of both families while preventing future conflict. Neither side receives everything it hoped for. Yet both leave with enough dignity to accept the judgment peacefully. In many ways, this is one of the greatest victories a ruler can achieve. A battle avoided often saves far more lives than one won. Outside, the bells of nearby churches quietly mark the passing hours. Jerusalem continues its ordinary work beneath the bright sky. A caravan enters one of the city gates carrying woven carpets, copper vessels, and sacks of grain from inland settlements. Camels kneel patiently while their burdens are unloaded. Merchants greet one another with familiar smiles. Children watch with curiosity as goods from distant regions appear before their eyes. Picture yourself walking slowly through the market once again. You hear Arabic, Latin, Greek, Armenian, and other languages blending together in calm conversation. This diversity is one of Jerusalem's defining features. Although political authority rests with the Latin Christian kingdom, daily life brings together people from many different backgrounds. They trade together, work together, sometimes disagree, often cooperate. Life is far more complex than simple stories of constant conflict. Inside the palace, Baldwin's midday meal is modest by royal standards. Fresh bread still warm from the ovens, a bowl of lentils seasoned with herbs, olives gathered from nearby groves, soft cheese made from goat's milk, a handful of dates, water, and diluted wine. Royal feasts certainly exist, especially during major religious celebrations or diplomatic occasions, but ordinary meals are often surprisingly simple. Imagine sharing this quiet meal. Conversation remains thoughtful rather than formal. A trusted advisor speaks about the coming olive harvest. Another discusses repairs needed at a fortress overlooking one of the kingdom's eastern approaches. The topics may sound ordinary, yet they reveal how deeply a kingdom depends upon careful management rather than constant heroism. As the meal concludes, Baldwin excuses himself for a short period of rest. Modern readers may assume that kings spent their days in endless luxury. The reality is often less comfortable. Hours of meetings, writing, travel, prayer, and judgment demand considerable energy. For Baldwin, whose illness gradually weakens his body, these quiet moments become especially valuable. Imagine entering a shaded chamber where cool air lingers behind thick curtains. The room is peaceful. Only the faint rustling of fabric moves with the breeze. A small table holds several manuscripts left for later reading. Nearby rests a simple wooden cross. The king closes his eyes for a few moments. Not from laziness, from necessity. His body requires more strength than it once did to complete the same daily tasks. Even so, his mind rarely rests. Thoughts continue turning quietly, reports still waiting to be answered, letters requiring signatures,
news from distant castles, concerns about the future. Outside these walls, another man is thinking just as carefully. Saladin. Imagine him hundreds of miles away, not yet the famous sultan remembered by history, but already proving himself to be an unusually capable leader. Born into a Kurdish family, Saladin has risen through military and political service rather than inheriting supreme power. He studies administration as seriously as warfare. He rewards loyalty, builds alliances, and understands that lasting authority depends upon more than battlefield success. Neither Baldwin nor Saladin spends every waking hour thinking about the other. Both have countless immediate responsibilities, yet history is quietly drawing their paths together. Each decision they make today will influence meetings that lie years ahead. As the afternoon slowly begins once more, a messenger arrives carrying news from one of the frontier castles. Imagine the rider entering the palace courtyard. His horse is damp with sweat after many hours upon dusty roads. The messenger bows deeply before presenting a sealed leather pouch. Inside are routine reports. Supplies remain sufficient. The wells continue producing fresh water. No large enemy movements have been observed. The roads remain open for merchants and pilgrims. It is good news. Sometimes the absence of danger is the most welcome message a kingdom can receive. Baldwin smiles faintly. He knows such peace may not last forever. Still, each peaceful day allows farmers to harvest their crops, allows children to grow, allows churches, mosques, and synagogues to welcome worshipers, allows merchants to continue their journeys across the Holy Land. Peace itself is valuable work. Imagine stepping once more onto the palace terrace as the afternoon light softens. A gentle breeze moves across the city. From this height, Jerusalem appears calm, almost untouched by the rival ambitions slowly gathering beyond its borders. Yet the young king understands something that only experience can teach. A ruler must prepare for tomorrow, even while today remains peaceful. That quiet habit of preparation will soon be tested. The years ahead will demand difficult choices, trusted friendships, painful losses, and extraordinary courage. For now, however, the city continues its gentle rhythm beneath the warm afternoon sun, unaware that one of the most remarkable chapters in its history is only beginning. The afternoon slowly begins to lean toward evening once again, and long shadows stretch across the courtyards of the royal palace. The bright heat of the day softens into a gentle warmth, while a steady breeze drifts through open archways, carrying with it the familiar scent of cypress trees, olive groves, and the distant smoke of cooking fires beginning to rise across Jerusalem. Imagine walking quietly beside King Baldwin. There is no hurried procession, no cheering crowds, only the measured footsteps of a young ruler moving through the place that has become both his home and the center of an entire kingdom. The palace itself seems almost alive. Servants cross the corridors carrying folded linen and baskets of fresh fruit gathered from nearby orchards.
Scribes continue copying letters beneath the fading afternoon light,
knowing that once darkness falls, their work will become much slower by the glow of oil lamps alone. Every corner of the palace reflects careful routine. Routine creates stability, and stability is something Baldwin values deeply. You find yourself entering a chamber where several young squires are receiving instruction from an experienced knight. Wooden practice swords rest against one wall. Nearby stands a rack of shields bearing the familiar crosses and colors of noble families throughout the kingdom. The knight is not teaching battle today. Instead, he speaks about discipline. A sword, he explains calmly, is only useful when guided by wisdom. The young boys listen carefully. Some are sons of powerful nobles. Others have traveled from distant castles to begin their education. They dream of tournaments, shining armor, and heroic victories. Very few yet understand that most knights spend far more time guarding roads, escorting travelers, settling disputes, and maintaining order than charging across battlefields.
Baldwin watches for a few quiet moments. Perhaps he remembers his own training. As a child, he learned to ride, hunt, and handle weapons just as every young noble was expected to do. William of Tyre later wrote that before the illness advanced, Baldwin showed considerable promise in these skills. His education had been preparing him for the life of a warrior king. Leprosy changed that future. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly, almost quietly. Imagine holding a practice sword in your own hands. At first, it feels comfortably balanced. Months later, because of growing numbness in your fingers, holding it becomes slightly more difficult. Years later still, every movement demands greater concentration than before. That is how many chronic illnesses unfold, not through one dramatic moment, but through countless small changes that gradually reshape everyday life. Yet Baldwin refuses to abandon learning. If his body cannot always lead from the front, his judgment must become even stronger. That determination shapes every decision he makes. Leaving the training yard, Baldwin continues toward one of the palace's quieter courtyards. A small fountain sends clear water into a shallow stone basin. Tiny birds gather there before darting away at the slightest movement. Fig trees provide welcome shade, and vines climb patiently along the old limestone walls. Imagine sitting here for a while. The sounds of the city become distant. Only the trickling water remains close. It is easy to understand why medieval monasteries and palaces often included peaceful gardens. Even rulers needed places where the mind could settle. One elderly monk approaches the king with quiet respect. He is known within the palace not for political influence, but for wisdom gathered over many years. Their conversation is gentle. They speak of patience, of faith, of accepting burdens that cannot simply be wished away. Neither man pretends that Baldwin's illness will disappear. Instead, they speak about living faithfully despite uncertainty. History rarely records conversations like these. Chronicles naturally focus on battles, treaties, and coronations. Yet moments of quiet reflection often shape leaders just as deeply as public events, perhaps even more so.
As the conversation ends, the monk offers a simple blessing before returning to his monastery. Baldwin remains beside the fountain for another few moments. The water catches the evening light, creating gentle reflections that dance across the surrounding stone. For just a little while, the kingdom feels wonderfully peaceful. Beyond Jerusalem's walls, farmers continue gathering the last bundles of grain from nearby fields. Imagine one such village. Children help stack sheaves beneath simple wooden shelters. Women prepare the evening meal over small hearths. An old shepherd counts his flock as they return from rocky hillsides. Life follows the changing seasons. The people living here know their king mostly through stories. Many will never stand inside the royal palace, yet they hope for the same things people everywhere have always hoped for. Healthy children, good harvests, safe roads, peaceful winters, neighbors they can trust. The success of a kingdom is measured not only by famous victories, but by whether ordinary families can quietly live their lives. As evening continues, Baldwin receives another visitor. This time it is the Grand Master of one of the military orders. The military orders are among the most remarkable institutions of the Crusader states. Men such as the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller combine religious vows with military service. They pray together, they train together, they defend pilgrims and frontier fortresses. They answer not only to earthly rulers, but also to the religious commitments they have freely accepted. Imagine the two men studying another large map spread across an oak table. Small carved markers indicate castles throughout the kingdom. Carac, Montreal, Seife, Beth-Gibelin. Each fortress guards an important road, water source, or mountain pass. Maintaining these castles requires constant effort. Stone walls weather beneath sun and rain. Cisterns must be cleaned. Food stores must be replenished. Horses require fresh fodder. Garrisons need regular pay and equipment. A castle is not simply built. It must be cared for every single day. The discussion remains practical. How much grain remains before the next harvest? Have nearby wells produced enough water? Are replacement horses needed? Can repairs wait another season? History often celebrates dramatic charges across battlefields, but kingdoms survive because someone remembers to repair the roof before winter arrives. Baldwin understands this. His advisors understand it too. That shared attention to ordinary details helps preserve stability during uncertain years. Outside, the first evening stars begin appearing above Jerusalem. The sky slowly changes from pale blue to deep violet. The day's warmth slips away, replaced by pleasantly cool air moving across the hills. Imagine climbing one of the palace towers. From here, countless tiny lights begin appearing throughout the city as households light their evening lamps. The view is breathtaking in its quiet simplicity. Church bells ring gently. Dogs bark somewhere in the distance. Families gather for supper. Pilgrims settle into crowded inns after long journeys. The city breathes together beneath the coming night. Baldwin stands silently for a few moments. Perhaps he wonders what future generations will remember about his reign. Perhaps he does not. Most people living through history rarely imagine how history will remember them. They simply try to do tomorrow's work as faithfully as they can. Far beyond the northern horizon, however, another leader also prepares for tomorrow. Saladin continues strengthening the alliances that will eventually unite much of the Muslim world around him, patiently, carefully, without unnecessary haste. Neither Baldwin nor Saladin seeks conflict for its own sake. Both understand that leadership is measured over years, not days. The meeting that history remembers is still some distance away. For now, two remarkable men continue walking separate paths beneath the same evening sky, each carrying responsibilities that grow heavier with every passing season. And as darkness gently settles over Jerusalem, another quiet chapter in the life of the young king comes to its peaceful close. Night settles fully over Jerusalem, and the city becomes wonderfully still. The lively conversations that filled the marketplaces during the day have faded into quiet murmurs behind wooden doors. Oil lamps glow softly through narrow windows, their warm light spilling gently onto the stone streets before disappearing into the darkness. Imagine standing upon the highest tower of the royal palace. Above you stretches a sky untouched by modern lights. Thousands of stars seem close enough to reach, shining with remarkable clarity over the hills of Judea. A cool breeze brushes against the ancient walls, carrying with it the scent of olive trees, dry grass, and the faint smoke of evening hearths. The kingdom sleeps, or at least most of it does. Some people must always remain awake. Along the city walls, guards continue their watch. Picture yourself beside one of them. His helmet rests against the stone battlements while his eyes slowly travel across the moonlit countryside. The road leading toward Jericho appears as a pale ribbon beneath the stars. Nothing moves except an occasional fox crossing the rocky hillsides and the distant silhouette of a caravan making slow progress beneath the cool night sky. Hours pass quietly. For a watchman, patience is every bit as important as courage. Many nights bring nothing unusual, yet every peaceful sunrise depends upon someone remaining alert through the darkness. Inside the palace, Baldwin has not yet gone to sleep. A single oil lamp burns beside a writing table where several unfinished letters remain. Imagine sitting there with him. The room is almost silent except for the occasional crackle of the lamp's flame. A sheet of parchment lies open before him. Its smooth surface reflects the golden light, while a freshly trimmed quill rests nearby beside a small pot of ink. Although scribes prepare most official documents, kings often review important correspondence personally before applying their seal. Tonight's letters concern familiar matters: supplies for a frontier fortress, a request from a monastery, seeking timber to repair damaged buildings, an invitation from a noble family asking the king to witness an important marriage agreement. These may appear to be ordinary concerns. In truth, they are the quiet threads holding the kingdom together. Imagine reading each letter carefully. Every decision carries consequences. Approving additional supplies for one castle may require delaying repairs elsewhere. Granting one family's request may disappoint another. Leadership often means choosing between several reasonable options rather than between obvious right and wrong. Baldwin understands this more with each passing year. Outside his chamber, footsteps echo softly along the corridor. A physician arrives for one final visit before the king retires. The examination is brief. The physician studies Baldwin's hands with careful attention. He notices small changes that few others would recognize. Because the disease affects sensation, even tiny injuries deserve attention. Modern medicine now understands why this happens.
Damage to the nerves can prevent a person from noticing cuts, burns, or pressure that healthy nerves would immediately detect. In the 12th century, however, physicians observed these effects without understanding their true cause. They simply knew that careful attention was essential. Imagine the physician quietly applying soothing herbal preparations before wrapping a hand with clean linen. No elaborate conversation follows, only quiet professionalism. Both men understand that tomorrow will bring another demanding day.
As the physician leaves, Baldwin walks toward the narrow window overlooking Jerusalem. The city rests peacefully beneath the moonlight. He can see the dark outline of church towers rising above the rooftops. Beyond them stand the mighty walls protecting the city. Beyond those walls stretches the wider kingdom. And beyond the kingdom lies a world constantly changing. Far away in Egypt, Saladin continues strengthening his authority. His position has not come easily. Years of careful service, political judgment, and military leadership have gradually earned him increasing responsibility. Unlike many rulers who inherit unquestioned authority, Saladin must continually prove himself to allies as well as rivals. Imagine him on this very same night. Perhaps he too studies reports delivered by trusted advisors. Perhaps he also pauses beside an open window before retiring. The two young leaders have never chosen to become symbols remembered across centuries. Yet history is steadily guiding them toward one another. Neither can escape the responsibilities placed upon them by birth, circumstance, and the expectations of those they lead. The comparison between them is often presented as one of simple enemies. Reality is more thoughtful. Each man is shaped by his own faith, culture, education, and duty. Each believes he serves a greater purpose. Each carries burdens that few people around him can fully understand. As the night grows deeper, Baldwin finally kneels in quiet prayer. Imagine the chapel illuminated by only a handful of candles. The scent of incense lingers faintly from the evening service. The silence feels almost complete. He offers no dramatic speeches, only quiet words known between himself and God. Faith is not merely part of medieval life. For Baldwin, it is one of the foundations upon which he bears every challenge, his illness, his crown, his uncertainty about the future, his hope that the kingdom entrusted to him may remain secure. When he finally returns to his chamber, the palace has become almost completely silent. Servants have retired. The kitchens are dark. Even the horses in the royal stables stand quietly, resting after another ordinary day. Imagine lying beneath warm wool blankets. The sounds of the city have faded almost entirely. Only the occasional call of a distant night watchman breaks the silence. For a little while, the burdens of kingship are set aside. Tomorrow has not yet arrived. The decisions waiting beyond sunrise can wait a few more hours. Sleep comes gently, but history never truly sleeps. While Baldwin rests, messengers continue riding across moonlit roads. Ships cross the Mediterranean beneath the stars. Merchants journey between distant cities. Monks continue copying ancient manuscripts by candlelight. Farmers dream of the coming harvest. Children sleep peacefully, unaware that they are growing up during one of the most remarkable periods in the history of the Holy Land. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the balance of power continues its slow, almost invisible transformation. Within only a few years, Baldwin's reign will face challenges unlike any he has yet experienced. Political rivalries inside the kingdom will become more difficult. The growing strength of Saladin will become impossible to ignore. The young king's illness will continue its relentless progress. Yet despite everything that lies ahead, he will continue doing what he believes a king must do. He will continue leading. He will continue judging. He will continue riding whenever he is able. And when the time comes,
He will even ride toward war, despite the terrible limitations placed upon his body. That remarkable chapter is drawing closer with every peaceful night that passes. As the stars slowly fade toward another dawn above Jerusalem, the story quietly prepares to enter one of the most important seasons of Baldwin's extraordinary life. The first light of dawn returns quietly to Jerusalem, touching the highest towers before slowly reaching the narrow streets below. The stars fade one by one, and the cool air of the night lingers for a little while longer, carrying the gentle fragrance of wild herbs growing among the rocky hills. Imagine waking to another morning inside the royal palace. The day begins much as the one before it did. Church bells echo softly across the city. Servants move quietly through the corridors, careful not to disturb the peaceful silence that exists only during these early hours. Somewhere in the kitchens, fresh bread is already baking, filling the air with a warm and familiar scent. Yet although the morning appears ordinary, history is slowly changing beyond the kingdom's borders. Many of the greatest turning points begin long before anyone recognizes them. A kingdom does not become stronger in a single afternoon. Neither does danger arrive without warning. It gathers patiently, almost invisibly. Picture yourself looking east from the palace walls. The desert seems endless beneath the growing sunlight. Long roads disappear over distant hills where merchants, pilgrims, shepherds, and soldiers all travel for different reasons. Some journeys bring friendship. Others carry troubling news. This morning, another messenger approaches Jerusalem. His horse has traveled for several days without much rest. Dust covers his cloak. His face shows the quiet exhaustion familiar to anyone who has spent long hours crossing the rough roads of the Holy Land. The palace guards recognize the urgency of his arrival and quickly escort him inside.
Baldwin receives the messenger in a smaller audience chamber rather than the great hall. Imagine the room. Morning sunlight falls across an oak table where maps remain carefully rolled beside sealed documents. A silver cup of fresh water stands untouched. The atmosphere is calm, but every person present senses that the report may carry unusual importance. The messenger bows deeply before speaking. He reports increasing cooperation among territories under Saladin's influence. No battle has begun. No fortress has fallen. But something important is changing. For years, the Muslim world surrounding the Crusader states has often been divided among different rulers with separate ambitions. Those divisions have sometimes limited their ability to act together. Now, however, Saladin is gradually accomplishing something few leaders have managed. He is bringing many of those regions into closer unity. This process does not happen through force alone. Diplomacy plays an equally important role. Alliances are negotiated. Trust is earned. Local leaders are persuaded that cooperation offers greater security than rivalry. Baldwin listens carefully. He understands the significance immediately. A divided neighbor presents one kind of challenge. A united neighbor presents another entirely. Imagine watching the king study the map before him. His finger traces familiar places: Damascus, Cairo, Aleppo, the Jordan Valley, the coastal cities. Each name represents far more than a point upon parchment. They represent people, resources, trade routes, fortresses, political relationships built over generations. The map itself cannot reveal intentions, only possibilities. That uncertainty requires wisdom. Rather than reacting with fear, Baldwin asks thoughtful questions. What do the frontier commanders observe? Have merchants reported changes along caravan routes? Are pilgrims still traveling safely? Have any border villages noticed unusual military activity? Each answer helps form a clearer picture. So far, the reports remain reassuring. Trade continues. The roads remain open. The frontier is peaceful. Yet wise rulers prepare before danger becomes obvious. That same morning, Baldwin requests another meeting with several experienced military advisors. Among them are men who have spent decades defending castles scattered throughout the kingdom. Their faces show years beneath the desert sun. Some carry old scars earned in campaigns long before Baldwin became king. Imagine sitting quietly as they gather around another large map. The discussion is practical rather than dramatic. Water supplies, food reserves, horse breeding, replacement equipment, messenger routes. Every successful defense depends upon careful preparation carried out long before the first arrow is ever fired. One elderly commander gently taps a fortress marked near the Jordan River. This castle, he explains, may never become famous. But if its wells fail, travelers suffer. If travelers avoid the road, trade declines. If trade declines, nearby villages struggle. His observation reminds everyone present, the kingdoms survive through countless ordinary decisions. Not every victory is won with swords. Some are won through planning. Outside the palace,
Ordinary life continues almost unchanged. Imagine walking once again through Jerusalem's bustling streets. A potter shapes wet clay upon a spinning wheel. His hands move with quiet confidence, developed through many years of practice. Nearby, an elderly woman carefully selects herbs from a market stall. A young apprentice learns how to repair leather sandals beneath the watchful eye of his master. Children gather around a storyteller who entertains them with familiar tales passed from one generation to the next. None of them can see the political changes slowly unfolding beyond the horizon, nor do they need to. Their hope is simple: that tomorrow will resemble today, that peace will continue, that harvests will be plentiful, that families will remain together. History often speaks about rulers. Ordinary people usually think about ordinary life. Perhaps that is exactly as it should be. Back inside the palace, Baldwin receives William of Tyre once again. The scholar has brought several manuscripts copied from earlier historical works. Imagine the two men sitting near an open window where a gentle breeze keeps the room pleasantly cool. William enjoys discussing the rulers of ancient Israel, the Roman Empire, Byzantium, and earlier Christian kingdoms. History, he believes, is more than a record of events. It is a teacher. Every generation inherits lessons from those who came before. Baldwin listens with genuine interest. He asks questions. Why did certain kingdoms prosper? Why did others disappear? Which rulers governed wisely? Which allowed pride to cloud their judgment? William rarely offers simple answers. History, he explains, is filled with complexity. Strong kings sometimes fail. Weak rulers occasionally succeed. Fortune changes, circumstances shift. Only character remains constant. These conversations quietly shape Baldwin's understanding of leadership. He cannot control his illness. He cannot control every decision made by neighboring rulers. He cannot control drought, disease, or the weather, but he can control how he responds. That choice remains his. As the afternoon light begins to soften, Baldwin walks once more through the palace gardens. Imagine following at a respectful distance. The fountain continues its gentle song. Bees drift lazily between flowering herbs. The leaves of ancient olive trees shimmer beneath the afternoon breeze. The peaceful scene almost invites forgetfulness. Yet Baldwin does not forget. He remembers every report, every letter, every conversation, every responsibility waiting for tomorrow. His steps remain measured. The illness has progressed another little distance since the previous year. Some movements require greater concentration. Some parts of his body no longer provide the reliable strength they once did. Still, those around him notice something else as well. His determination has grown stronger. Sometimes hardship quietly strengthens qualities that comfort never reveals. As evening approaches, once again the city prepares for another peaceful night. Families gather around simple meals. Monks sing evening prayers. Watchmen prepare for another long vigil beneath the stars. Far beyond Jerusalem, Saladin continues building the alliances that will soon reshape the history of the Holy Land. Neither man yet knows exactly when their paths will finally cross in open conflict, but that meeting is no longer a distant possibility. It is slowly becoming an unavoidable future. And when that day finally arrives, the world will witness one of the most remarkable moments of Baldwin's reign, a young king whose body has been weakened by disease, yet whose courage will inspire both friend and foe alike. That unforgettable chapter waits just beyond the horizon. The days continue to pass with the quiet rhythm that has become familiar within the kingdom of Jerusalem. Morning follows evening, letters continue to arrive, and the business of ruling never truly pauses. Yet beneath the calm surface, the balance of the eastern Mediterranean is slowly changing. Much like the tide before anyone notices, the sea has begun to rise. Imagine another peaceful dawn breaking over the Mount of Olives. The first rays of sunlight reach the highest towers of Jerusalem before spilling into its winding streets. The city's pale limestone reflects the morning light with a gentle glow, while cool shadows still linger beneath archways and along the narrow lanes. The palace is already awake. Servants quietly prepare the royal chambers. Scribes sharpen fresh quills for another day's correspondence. Stable hands feed the horses before brushing their coats until they shine softly beneath the early sun. Every person has a task. Every task helps the kingdom function. Picture yourself walking slowly through the palace courtyard. The stones beneath your feet have been worn smooth by generations of footsteps. Water trickles steadily into a small basin where birds gather before darting away into nearby olive trees. For a few peaceful moments, nothing seems unusual. Then another messenger arrives. Unlike many before him, this rider does not come from a nearby fortress. He has traveled a far greater distance. Dust has settled deeply into the folds of his cloak. His horse moves with the slow, careful steps of an animal that has carried its rider across many days of rough country. The message concerns events in Egypt and Syria. Saladin's influence continues to grow. Not through reckless conquest, not through endless warfare, but through careful administration, patient diplomacy, and steady leadership. Modern historians often point out that Saladin's greatest strength was not simply his skill as a commander. He possessed an unusual ability to unite people who had previously followed different rulers. This required patience, trust, negotiation, and considerable political judgment. Baldwin understands what this means. A stronger neighbor does not become dangerous overnight. Its strength accumulates gradually, almost invisibly, like a tree whose roots spread quietly beneath the soil long before its branches become impossible to ignore. Imagine Baldwin studying another collection of reports. Some describe military matters, others concern trade. Still others discuss diplomacy among neighboring territories. He notices patterns rather than isolated events. This habit serves him well. Wise rulers rarely focus upon a single piece of news. They look for the larger picture emerging from many smaller details. Outside the palace, life continues with remarkable normality. A blacksmith stands beside a glowing forge, shaping horseshoes with calm, practiced movements. Each strike of the hammer echoes softly through the workshop. Nearby, an apprentice watches carefully, hoping one day to master the same craft. The smell of hot iron mingles with charcoal smoke. Across the street, a woman hangs freshly washed linen where the morning breeze can dry it beneath the bright sky. Children carry baskets of figs toward the marketplace. Their conversation is cheerful. Their future, like every child's, remains unknown. History often tells us about kings and generals, but kingdoms are built every day by ordinary hands. Imagine walking beyond the city walls for a short distance. The countryside stretches gently before you. Terraced fields climb the hillsides. Olive groves shimmer beneath the sunlight. Vineyards spread across fertile slopes where farmers quietly tend the coming harvest. A shepherd guides his flock toward fresh pasture. His movements are unhurried. He has walked these same hills countless times. The land itself feels ancient. Many generations have planted these fields. Many generations have harvested them. Empires have risen and fallen while the olive trees continued growing. Back within Jerusalem, Baldwin meets with several church leaders. Religion shapes every part of life within the kingdom. Churches are not only places of worship, they also provide education, care for the poor, assistance to pilgrims, and guidance during difficult times. Imagine entering one of the city's great churches. The air feels noticeably cooler than outside. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, illuminating gentle clouds of incense rising toward the high ceiling. Candles flicker quietly before painted icons. Their soft light creates an atmosphere of peaceful reflection. Baldwin kneels for a few moments, not because he expects an easy future, but because faith offers steadiness when certainty is impossible. Throughout history, many rulers have sought wisdom in moments of quiet prayer before making difficult decisions. The burdens of leadership often become easier to carry when shared with hope. Leaving the church, Baldwin pauses to greet several pilgrims. Their clothing reveals journeys from distant lands. One family has traveled from northern France. Another group speaks Italian among themselves. A monk from England quietly thanks the king for protecting the roads leading to Jerusalem. Pilgrimage remains one of the kingdom's greatest responsibilities. Visitors arrive from across Christian Europe hoping to pray at places they have known only through Scripture. Their journeys are long, sometimes dangerous. Many spend months crossing mountains, rivers, and seas before finally reaching the holy city. For Baldwin, keeping those roads safe is both a political and religious duty. Imagine seeing the city through the eyes of one such pilgrim. After weeks upon dusty roads, Jerusalem suddenly appears upon the horizon. Its walls rise proudly above the surrounding hills. Church bells echo through the clear air. The sight alone fills weary travelers with quiet gratitude. They know little about the king beyond stories heard during their journey. Yet his decisions have helped to make their arrival possible. As the afternoon continues, Baldwin returns once more to the palace library. William of Tyre is already waiting. Several manuscripts lie open upon the table. Today's discussion concerns the responsibilities of memory.
William explains that every generation chooses what to remember. Some celebrate victories, others preserve stories of courage. Still others record acts of kindness that never appear in official chronicles. History, he reminds Baldwin, belongs not only to kings, but also to countless ordinary people whose names are gradually forgotten. Imagine running your fingers gently across the smooth parchment. Each page represents weeks of careful work. Each sentence may outlive the person who wrote it. William himself cannot know that historians will still read his writings hundreds of years later. Yet his dedication quietly preserves one of the most valuable windows into Baldwin's life. Without him, much would have been lost. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. Golden light settles once again across Jerusalem's rooftops. Long shadows stretch through the palace gardens. The familiar fountain continues its gentle song. Baldwin walks there alone for a little while. His pace has become slower than it was only a few years earlier. The illness continues its patient work. His hands no longer respond with the same certainty. His feet sometimes fail to warn him of discomfort. Simple movements demand increasing concentration, yet his mind remains remarkably clear. Those around him continue seeking his judgment because they trust his wisdom. Perhaps that is one of the quiet lessons hidden within his story. Strength takes many forms. Sometimes it is found in a warrior charging across a battlefield. Sometimes it is found in a ruler, patiently listening before speaking. Sometimes it is found in rising each morning despite knowing that illness will accompany every step. As twilight settles over the holy city once again, Baldwin looks across the peaceful landscape. Somewhere beyond those distant hills, history is gathering momentum. Soon, the kingdom will face decisions unlike any it has yet known. Soon, Baldwin's courage will be measured not only within council chambers, but also upon the battlefield itself. That remarkable chapter is now drawing very near. The rhythm of the kingdom remains steady for a little while longer, almost as though Jerusalem itself wishes to hold on to these peaceful days. Morning follows morning. The palace gates open with the first light, and they close again long after the evening lamps have been lit. The routines of government continue with quiet determination, even as the wider world slowly changes beyond the horizon. Imagine waking before sunrise once more. The air is cool enough that your breath is almost visible as you step into the palace courtyard. The stones beneath your feet still hold a little of the night's chill. Somewhere nearby, a fountain murmurs softly, while the first birds greet another day from the branches of old olive trees. The palace has become familiar now. You know the sound of servants beginning their work. You recognize the careful footsteps of scribes carrying bundles of parchment. You notice the gentle clatter of armor as the morning guard changes duty. For Baldwin, these familiar sounds offer a quiet sense of order. His own body may become less predictable with each passing year, but the kingdom still depends upon routines that begin before dawn and continue until long after sunset. Imagine following him into the royal chapel, Only a handful of candles burn at this early hour. Their small flames flicker gently beneath the stone arches. The scent of incense from the previous evening still lingers in the cool air. A few monks kneel silently in prayer, their voices rising softly as they sing ancient hymns that have echoed through these walls for generations. Baldwin joins them without ceremony. He does not arrive as a distant monarch. He arrives as another worshipper seeking strength for the day ahead. For medieval rulers, faith was woven naturally into public and private life. Victories and defeats, births and deaths, harvests and droughts. Everything was understood through a deeply religious view of the world. Whatever modern readers may believe today, it is important to understand that Baldwin's faith was genuine. It shaped the choices he made. It influenced how he understood suffering. It reminded him that kings, like every other person, remained answerable to something greater than themselves. As the morning slowly arrives, another council assembles. This gathering is smaller than usual. Only the king's closest advisors have been invited. Imagine entering the chamber. Heavy curtains soften the bright sunlight pouring through the windows. Maps remain spread across the familiar table. Small carved markers indicate castles, roads, rivers, and frontier settlements. No one speaks immediately. Silence itself has become part of these meetings. Each advisor understands that careful thought is often more valuable than hurried words. Finally, one commander begins. Reports from the northern frontier remain calm. Trade continues without interruption. Pilgrims still travel safely, yet patrols have noticed increased movement among several neighboring territories. Nothing openly hostile, simply more organized than before. Baldwin nods thoughtfully. He has heard similar reports for months. Each one by itself seems unremarkable. Together they suggest a larger pattern. Imagine watching him move one of the small wooden markers across the map. It is a simple gesture, yet behind it lies an extraordinary responsibility. One misplaced decision could affect thousands of people living throughout the kingdom. A wise ruler learns to think slowly. Outside the palace, Jerusalem continues living its ordinary life. The marketplace fills steadily with familiar faces. An elderly spice merchant arranges neat rows of cinnamon, cumin, saffron, and black pepper brought from distant lands. The rich aromas drift through the morning air, mixing with the smell of warm bread and fresh olives. Nearby, a young apprentice carefully polishes brass lamps until they gleam in the sunlight. His master watches with patient approval. Skills such as these are passed from one generation to the next, often within the same family. Imagine stopping beside a carpenter's workshop. The steady rhythm of wooden mallets fills the street. Fresh cedar shavings cover the floor, releasing their clean, comforting fragrance. The carpenter shapes a sturdy table destined for a monastery outside the city. His work is careful. There is no hurry. Well-made furniture may serve several generations before needing a replacement. In many ways, medieval craftsmen think much like historians. Both understand that careful work lasts longer than hurried work. Baldwin occasionally leaves the palace without grand ceremony
to observe these ordinary scenes, not because he enjoys interrupting daily life, rather because seeing the kingdom directly teaches lessons that written reports sometimes miss. Imagine a small child noticing the king as he passes. The boy pauses, holding tightly to his mother's hand. He has heard stories about the young ruler who governs Jerusalem. To him, Baldwin seems calm rather than frightening. The king smiles gently. The child smiles back. It is only a brief moment. History rarely records such encounters, yet they remind us that rulers are seen differently through the eyes of ordinary people. Not everyone judges a king by battles alone. Many remember kindness, courtesy, a reassuring presence. As midday approaches, Baldwin receives another visitor whose arrival has become increasingly frequent over recent years. It is one of his physicians. The examination takes place privately. Imagine the physician carefully studying the king's hands. He notices another small wound that Baldwin himself had scarcely felt. The disease continues its quiet progress. Modern medicine explains why this happens. The nerves responsible for sensing pain have become damaged. Without pain acting as a warning, small injuries can become serious if overlooked. The physician gently cleans the wound before applying fresh linen bandages. Neither man speaks very much. There is no need. They both understand that tomorrow another examination will likely follow. The illness has become a companion neither of them invited. Yet Baldwin refuses to allow it to define every hour of his life. After the physician departs, the king asks to review several petitions submitted by people throughout the kingdom. Some seek permission to repair village mills. Others request relief after poor harvests. One concerns a dispute over access to a shared well. Imagine reading each petition carefully. These are not glamorous matters. No songs will be written about them. Still, they matter deeply to those whose lives depend upon the outcome. Justice often reveals itself through ordinary decisions. Not every act of good government becomes famous. As afternoon light fills the palace gardens, Baldwin walks slowly beneath the olive trees once again. The familiar fountain continues its quiet song. Dragonflies hover above the water before darting away. The breeze gently stirs the leaves overhead. For a few moments, the world seems wonderfully peaceful. Yet somewhere beyond the hills, Saladin continues strengthening the alliances that will soon transform the political landscape of the Near East. His reputation grows steadily, not through loud proclamations, but through competence, through discipline, through patient leadership that earns increasing respect. The distance separating the two leaders is becoming smaller with every passing season. Soon, reports will become warnings. Warnings will become preparations. Preparations will become decisions that no king can avoid. But tonight, Jerusalem still rests beneath a peaceful sky. Its people gather for evening meals. Families light their lamps. Pilgrims give thanks for another safe day within the holy city. And King Baldwin IV, carrying both a crown and a burden few could truly understand, quietly prepares for what
whatever tomorrow may bring. The years pass quietly, one season following another, and the young king who once rode confidently through the streets of Jerusalem gradually finds that each year asks a little more of him than the last. Oh, his responsibilities have never become lighter. If anything, they have only grown heavier. Imagine standing once more upon the palace terrace as the first light of morning touches the holy city. The familiar rooftops stretch before you. Church bells ring gently in the cool air. Smoke rises from hundreds of small hearths as families prepare another simple breakfast. Pilgrims begin walking toward the sacred places that drew them across seas and mountains. The city feels peaceful.
Yet beneath that peaceful morning lies a reality that can no longer be ignored. Baldwin's illness has continued its slow and relentless course. The numbness that first appeared during childhood has spread further. Modern historians believe that by the later years of his reign, his eyesight had begun to fail, and walking had become increasingly difficult. Riding a horse required assistance. At times, trusted companions helped him mount, not because his courage had faded, but because his body no longer obeyed him as faithfully as it once had. And still, he remained king. That simple truth says much about the respect he earned. Many rulers have possessed healthy bodies but uncertain judgment. Baldwin's body weakened while his determination remained remarkably steady. Imagine sitting beside him during one quiet evening. The palace has grown silent. An oil lamp burns softly upon a wooden table. Outside the window, the stars appear above Jerusalem, just as they did on the night of his childhood. Some things never seem to change. Others change so slowly that they are difficult to notice until many years have passed. The kingdom around him also continued changing. Political rivalries within the royal court became increasingly complicated. Questions of succession could no longer be postponed. Because Baldwin had no children and his illness made the future uncertain, every noble family understood that the next generation of leadership would shape the fate of Jerusalem. His sister, Sibylla, became central to those discussions. Her marriage was no longer simply a family matter. It became a matter of state. Councils met. Arguments were held. Alliances shifted. Every decision carried consequences that reached far beyond the palace walls. Meanwhile, beyond the borders of the kingdom, Saladin continued accomplishing something extraordinary. Patiently, he united much of Egypt and Syria under his leadership. His authority grew not through a single dramatic victory, but through years of careful administration, diplomacy, and military success. By bringing together territories that had often acted independently, he created a far stronger political and military power than the Crusader states had faced for many years. History was changing, and both Baldwin and Saladin understood it. Then came one of the defining moments of Baldwin's reign. The year was 1177. Saladin entered the kingdom of Jerusalem with a powerful army, believing the kingdom was vulnerable. Baldwin, despite his illness and despite commanding a much smaller force, refused simply to remain behind palace walls. Imagine the determination required to make that decision. Every movement already demanded effort.
pain was no longer a reliable warning. The disease had weakened his body, yet he chose to lead. Near Montgisard, the two armies met. Historians continue to debate the exact numbers involved, but the outcome itself is well established. Against overwhelming expectations, Baldwin's forces achieved a remarkable victory. The battle became one of the greatest successes of his reign. It was not merely a military achievement. It demonstrated something deeply personal. His illness had not taken away his resolve. Imagine the quiet after the battle. The noise of swords has faded. The dust slowly settles. The wounded receive care. The tired horses drink deeply. Victory brings relief rather than celebration. Every battle, even one successfully fought, leaves behind sorrow as well as triumph. Baldwin understood this. War was never simply glory. It was responsibility measured in human lives. The years after Montgisard remained difficult. The kingdom continued facing political disagreements. Saladin recovered from defeat and steadily rebuilt his strength. Baldwin's health declined further. Eventually, he could no longer lead armies in the way he once had. Trusted commanders carried greater responsibility. The king increasingly ruled through careful judgment rather than physical presence. Imagine one final evening in Jerusalem. The palace gardens are as peaceful as ever. The familiar fountain still murmurs softly beneath the olive trees. The fragrance of jasmine drifts gently through the cool evening air. The city beyond the walls continues its ordinary life. Children laugh in narrow streets. Merchants close their shops. Monks gather for evening prayers. Shepherds return home with their flocks. Life continues. It always has. It always will. In the spring of 1185, Baldwin IV died, likely at about 23 years of age. His reign had lasted little more than a decade. His life had been painfully short, yet his memory endured. History often remembers him by the name the Leper King. That title is true, but it is incomplete. He was also a thoughtful ruler, a careful listener, a determined leader who continued serving despite an illness that would have overwhelmed many others. His story is not one of perfect success. No ruler's story ever is. After his death, political divisions within the kingdom deepened. Only 2 years later, in 1187, Saladin defeated the Crusader army at the Battle of Hattin. Soon afterward, Jerusalem itself surrendered to him. Those events reshaped the history of the Holy Land. Yet they do not diminish Baldwin's own achievements. If anything, they remind us how difficult his task truly was. Imagine leaving the palace one final time. The morning sun rises once again above Jerusalem. The limestone walls glow softly in the early light. Pilgrims continue arriving. Church bells continue ringing. The marketplace slowly fills with familiar voices. The kingdom that Baldwin tried so carefully to protect becomes part of history, just as every kingdom eventually does. Only the stories remain. Perhaps that is why people still remember him after more than 8 centuries. Not because he lived without suffering, but because suffering did not prevent him from carrying the responsibilities entrusted to him. History is often filled with powerful rulers whose names fade with time. Baldwin's story endures for a quieter reason. It reminds us that courage is not always loud. Sometimes courage is simply rising each morning, accepting burdens that cannot be changed, and continuing to serve others with patience, wisdom, and dignity. As the morning slowly arrives over the ancient hills surrounding Jerusalem, the bells ring once more across the holy city. The wind moves gently through the olive branches. The first merchants open their stalls. Another ordinary day begins. And somewhere in that peaceful silence, the memory of a young king still lingers. Walking slowly through the stone corridors of his palace, listening carefully before speaking, carrying both a crown and an illness with quiet grace. The city awakens. The story comes gently to its end, and the hills of Jerusalem remain just as they have for countless generations, watching the passage of time with patient silence.